Managing Dependencies, Part 1, Intra-Team Dependencies. A dependency is a potential impediment, something that keeps us from moving forward. Some dependencies have an amazing ability to crush our ability to deliver. Product owners have these plans in mind about how they're going to deliver value. They encounter dependencies that prevent that from happening. So we want to eliminate or at least minimize dependencies. Sometimes we can't. What do you do when you encounter them? Well, there are three general categories of dependencies that a Scrum team will encounter, each becoming more and more challenging. For this first session, we're going to look at intra-team dependencies. This is the least challenging, where a single team has all the skills needed to produce a completed, meeting the definition of done, product backlog item, an increment. They have no external dependencies, and yet they may still encounter either product backlog item dependencies or sprint backlog item dependencies. In either case, a good self-managed team with excellent Scrum Master facilitation skills should be able to figure this out for themselves. For product backlog dependencies, we're referring to the situations where you have one product backlog item that cannot be completed until another one is at least started, maybe must be completed. Oftentimes, those intra-team product backlog dependencies are a technical matter. For example, the product owner brings a set of product backlog items to the team at the beginning of the sprint, and the product owner has already ordered those product backlog items, 1, 2, 3, and explains that they're looking for these 10 items to be delivered in this coming sprint. Is that possible? The developers look at the work and realize, hey, product owner, we know that you've ordered them in this manner, and that's your right to do so. However, if you want us to deliver in this order, we're going to run into some problems because item 1 is dependent on, for example, item 5. If we could reorder these, if we could take number 5 and move that up to number 1, it'll make the rest of the work go a lot smoother. The product owner has the final say on the order of the product backlog, but it's very reasonable for the product owner to take technical feedback from their developers and allow their ordering to be influenced based on that technical efficiency. If you want to get ahead of this problem, the best you can, rework, decompose product backlog items to be more independent of each other. This would best be addressed during a product backlog refinement discussion. Sometimes it happens in sprint planning because we didn't see it coming. But it would be best if we could know about this ahead of time and rethink the product backlog dependencies. The second type of intra-team dependency, sprint backlog dependencies. For those dependencies, the developers are responsible to coordinate the tasks around those dependencies. Some things that might help here. While we're in sprint planning, try to understand the potential risks created by dependencies and agree on how they will be handled. The most common example that I'm sure many of you have encountered has to do with programming versus testing. The old traditional way of programming first and then testing has a built-in dependency. And if you're in a Scrum team where that is carried out to the extreme, you'll have the first 2/3 of the sprint dedicated towards programming and the last third dedicated to testing, clearly setting up dependencies within ourselves. We want to try to overcome that and learn how to work together more closely so that we can deliver incrementally throughout the sprint, minimizing that glut at the end that has a high risk of failure. Another example of sprint backlog dependencies has to do with as we plan out the work of the sprint. We recognize that we have a couple of different paths we can choose to complete the work. We can choose path A or we can choose path B, but we realize that for that one path to be successful, there might be some dependencies that we have to complete beforehand. What would the differences be between getting work completed for path A versus path B? Regardless of the particular intra-team dependency, self-management is the key here. And we monitor those dependencies closely during the sprint to make sure that we're not accumulating risk that's going to cause us more problems at the end. This only gets more complicated. So please join us for our next session on inter-team dependencies.